Hi, welcome to Self-Generated. My name is Steve. We are talking about perceptions. We're going to be talking about touch, the sensation of touch, how it's important, how that actually works. But formatively, why we're talking about this is that there may be a way that you think touch works, or how important it is, or what it means to you versus the actual technical, real way it works. And maybe some of the implications of the differences between those things. And that's really the whole point of Self-Generated, is that exploring of the difference between what we believe to be true, what is actually true about our consciousness, our ideas, our self, our emotions. And that if you believe, or you need to believe, that when you touch, if you were standing right here and we touch fingers like this, that we have connected and touched, and your experience of touch is 100% reflection of reality, then you're going to have a problem. Because your experience of touch is not a 100% reflection of reality. It's a reflection of what you interpret these signals to be. What do I mean by that is that if I touch this wall, I feel I, in the real world, touch this wall. And yeah, fine, my hand touched this wall, but the sensation, the experience of me touching the wall is from signals that are sent to my brain, and that experience is more based off of my expectations. They're more based off of my prior expectations and my logic to the situation, meaning that if I touch the wall and all of a sudden it feels hot, and I pull my hand away, I check to see if I've been burned. The reality of it is that anything over, I'll put the temperature range up here, over a certain temperature, even if it's not damaging to your hand, you experience as pain, because you're not meant to experience touch as a 100% aspect of reality. It's a useful construct for you to be able to move around in the world. And so that over a certain amount, just to be safe, there's no need to have like a perfect temperature sensor that it's 194 degrees. Oh no, you don't need that. You need over a certain amount. Fuck it, it's hot. It's gonna hurt you. Same with a temperature, a lower temperature. That's why if you put your hand in ice, it's painful. You're not doing damage, but you experience as though you're doing damage. I mean, if you left it long enough, you could do frostbite, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the initial experience of pain, even though you're not necessarily harming yourself. It's not some primal instinct. It's that your experience of touch, temperature, one, is not perfect over the totality of your skin. It's in blotches. There's heat sensors, there's cold sensors. It's not even, but that it's supposed to be just an amalgam. It's a generation. It's an idea of how hot or cold something is, because your experience is going to err on the side of caution, because it's not 100% reality. It doesn't need to be. It's not meant to be. It's not built for that. If you could feel every little tiny little detail that every little sensor signal could come up, you would lose your fucking shit. Think of the totality of your skin right now. It's the biggest organ on your body. Lots of sensory stuff going on there. You, like most people, or if you're like me, you can feel pretty much everywhere on your skin. If I went bit by bit, and nothing sexual, get your head out of the gutter, but if I went bit by bit and checked every inch of me, right, I would have the sensation of touching that part of me. But I'm wearing clothes right now, and I don't experience feeling all of my clothes all at once. That would probably be pretty uncool. Well, why is that? It's because my experience, my perception of touch, is not just all the sensory signals coming up and that which is me sitting in a chair experiencing it. And it's not just that which is me deciding which is important. All right, there's a whole system that decides what's important, the salience, the attention of things. And then that is what we start to pay attention to. That's what we experience. That's different, right? Like, for example, you have a left foot or a right foot, and you weren't experiencing it, you weren't thinking about it until I told you to move your foot around in your shoe, in your sock, in your croc, whatever the hell you're wearing. If nothing at all, you're moving your toes on the floor. And you have an experience of the movement of them, the feeling of them, the coldness of the floor, the whatever it is. You didn't have it before. It was there. Did your foot just come into existence? No. Your perception of it did, because your experience is not 100% reflection of reality. It's a reflection of what you believe reality to be. That sensory signal is still coming through. It's just brought up to the surface to be paid attention to generate the model, to generate the experience. That's different than us thinking that touch is a 100% reflection of reality. And that touch, and how touch is important in being a social animal. And that we don't think about it that way, but that if you and I were to touch hands, how many people would feel uncomfortable with that? I was never a hugger for most of my life. I would be the the uncomfortable hugging, right? I didn't grow up with it. I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't understand it. I didn't feel comfortable feeling vulnerable with it. And that now I understand that being open to hugging and touch it's not just the touch, it's not just the physicality of it. Part of it is exposure and experience to the idea that it's okay. It's not dangerous. I'm being vulnerable. I'm okay being vulnerable. I'm okay touching somebody else. It doesn't have to be anything bad, but I had modeled it as something that I needed to worry about. I had never stopped myself and allowed myself to be okay with it, and I didn't live in an environment that allowed and perpetuated that. It's not just I was born with certain genes for touch. I was in a certain environment or trauma of touch. It was how I modeled touch. I didn't understand it. And then that's, the exhilaration of touch, sexual touch, all the different types of touch, welcome and unwelcome. Those aren't mechanical, those are psychological, those are modeled. These are threat, non-threat. And that when we look at it through that lens, we realize that touch is kind of different, that our experiences are a little different. And that it's not that my experience has nothing to do with reality, but my experience is not 100% reality. And I have to learn to be okay with that. Because if I feel the need for it to be 100% reality, I'm going to always suffer the consequences of the signal of reality coming in, being reality. Reality is going to reality, doesn't give a fuck. But I am going to operate on a way where the signal is going to not match. Needs to be 100% reality. It can't be. If you were to lose a limb, maybe you've heard of it, phantom limb. This is not a gimmick. People who lose limbs will still experience the limb. They'll experience pain. And people will go, oh, that's weird. That's dumb. Is it trauma? Well, yes, but the idea is your experience of your hand is not just physical connections. You're not an erector set. Most of your experience is software. And that when you remove the physicality of the hand, you still have the experience of the hand because the hand experience is generated in the head. All right? And that if that is uncomfortable, that's because it conflicts with the idea of what we think and how we think it works. Now, this is the core of the self-generated podcast, is that getting comfortable with ideas that challenge our views of reality and not needing other people's views to be one way or the other, but to be comfortable with the exploration of that. And that touch, that sensation, that physical sensation is no different than the emotional sensations. You can have just as much physical pain as you can have emotional pain. And that's not because one is real and one is fake. They're both the same. And that we want to give one less authenticity. Like you shouldn't feel bad. If you generate the feeling of bad, you feel bad. Your system does not give a fuck about reality. It believes whatever it's experiencing is reality. It makes it reality, right? And that when it comes to pain, there's references to people who've been injured and they haven't actually been injured. There's I think one where a guy fell on a nail and he was driven to the hospital, and it turns out that the nail had only punctured his work boot and it hadn't in his foot, but he was screaming in pain. And people go, oh, how stupid, right? But the reality is that he felt that everybody was acting that he should be injured. He had some level of trauma from the accident, but it was not an injury a mechanical injury you could tell. It just, the nail had gone in between the toes. And that his experience of pain is valid. People make fun of people with fibromyalgia and all these other things. They go, it's not real pain or whatever it is, right? And that you don't understand that pain is only here. And it's not that you can overcome all types of pain, that pain has a purpose, but it's modeled. It's not just the signal. How we interpret it changes it. That's how people can and do get through painful situations. That's how people become Navy SEALs. Part of it is not just the physicality, it's the way they model and relate to the pain, how they acknowledge the pain, how they don't validate the pain, how they model and deal with it on a regular basis and reinforce that. Changes how they deal with it. And it's not that you can just snap it away. It's not that it's not valid. It's that it's different than what you think. It's not purely physical. And saying that is not to invalidate. The fact that every single every pill you take has to go through a test to see if it's better than the placebo effect. Are you familiar with the placebo effect? It's not a gimmick. It's not stupid. Every pharmaceutical has to go through some level of scrutiny of this, because humans, by nature, if I give you a sugar pill and out of 100 people and say it's going to give you XYZ results, a certain number of those people will claim or feel or experience those results. That's not stupid. That's actually a byproduct of active inference, I believe. It's a byproduct of our upbringing. That's a byproduct of our history. And that it's in no small part that a large amount of our experience and how our bodies react are in our mindset. And that when they test these drugs, they have to make sure that they are acting past that boundary of placebo effect, which is increasing in modern years. The boundary, what I mean by that is that more and more people expect the placebo effect because of their innate belief in modern medicine. And how can that be? Is because we model the world and our beliefs are intrinsic to our experiences more than the reality of the signals coming in. Does that make sense? All right, and that our sense of touch is important. It's being a social animal, touching somebody else, touching, and not just in a sexual way, is vitally important to our own intellectual health, our own emotional health, our own comfort. And that when we feel uncomfortable with that, we are putting ourselves into a position to generate discomfort throughout life, because this is natural behavior. It'll be around us. We'll see evidence of it all around, people hugging, being comfortable, doing all these things, and we will feel left out. We feel alienated for no reason other than we have difficulty, and this was me, in generating comfort with that experience. And it's because of I didn't know what touch was. I thought touch was 100% reflection of reality. I would touch people and I didn't know. I couldn't get comfortable with the idea. And I was lost in a lot of different ways. And that touch alone is not going to save you mentally about any of this, but it's one of the pieces of evidence that we're creatures of predictive processing, active inference. We generate our experience, and that touch is vitally important. But things like wetness are not reflections of reality. That you don't have hydrometers, you don't have sensors in your skin to detect how much water you have. But you and I would all say we've experienced wetness. Our experience of wetness is the temperature differential, the viscosity of it, meaning like the texture, so like a difference of oil versus water. That those experiences of being in water you only experience afterwards, when you get out and you feel the coldness and you rub in the fact that your hand moves really smooth. You'd be able to tell if it was different, if it was baby oil, like if you were at a Diddy party. The point is that it's not just wetness. You're not just experiencing wetness. You're experiencing an amalgam of things that you call an experience as wetness. But they're not a direct reflection of reality, meaning it's not a sensor coming in going, you're 82% wet here. It doesn't work that way. We don't think of it that way because we don't pause and think of it. And also when we do, if it challenges what we believe to be true, we have a tendency to give it whatever correlation, whatever answer that offsets that sense of unease. Oh, it's probably not true, or it doesn't matter, or who cares, oh, that's funny. Versus understanding that formatively it changes everything. And that's what we try to explore here on Self-Generated, that the idea that every aspect of us might be slightly different than what we perceive, because if I thought that it was 100% reality and it's not, I'm already having to readjust. And then when you readjust that, man, there's a whole lot out there that you have to take a look at. And when you redo your math, maybe it changes you. That did for me. And then if you have any questions, hit me up on Self-Generated, SelfGen. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the section below here on YouTube, or you can hit me up on X at SelfGen Podcast. And then either way, whether you want to rage or love me, it doesn't matter. The algorithm doesn't care about reality. Just like our senses, it doesn't give a fuck.